Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to Mobility Magic on a Monday. It is 11:30 on a Monday and we're getting started with your week, first session of the week for Good Life Fitness at Home. Welcome if you're joining us live, welcome if you're joining us on the replay. Great to see you all. If you're new, if you are tuning in for the first time, if you're tuning in because you tune every week, thank you very much for joining us. And today we're going to do a little bit of hip work. I had a few requests in for that, so we're cycling back around, we're doing a little bit more hip work, which I know a lot of you love, so that's great. And if you have any feedback, insults, anything you want to say to us, feel free to leave a comment on the video after we post it later, so you can get the things that you want covered in the session. This week you will need your chair that we sometimes use. I have a ball as well. I'm going to show you if you have a ball. It's the Euro Cup after all, so I thought we'd throw in a couple moves with a ball. If you don't have those, I'm going to show you some modifications, so no problems there. We probably won't get around to using the lacrosse ball or the foam roller today, maybe if we have time at the end, but probably not. And yeah, so we're going to get straight into it for those of you who are joining us to actually do the session today. In terms of comments, great to see you all. Looks like we've got loads of people today, loads of regulars. Lovely to see you all. So we're going to work a little bit on the hip. Now I like to initiate some of the hip stuff with a bit of rotation. 3 ways I'm going to show you how to do that today. The first one is our standing windscreen wiper position, which is planting our foot, weight into one side, and we're turning this foot in and out. So this is a very basic beginner level windscreen wiper movement. We're just trying to get this ball in the socket to move. So if you have too much weight on this side, it's going to be very difficult. There's going to be a little bit more resistance. If you put more weight onto this one side, it's going to be a little bit easier. So you can lean on something, lean on a wall if you want to. But the idea is we're turning it from 12 o'clock around to about 3 o'clock, and we're trying not to move our hips. So if you can imagine my hips have headlights and they're pointing forwards, my toe is turning outwards, my weight is on this leg. Idea is just getting that socket, that ball in the socket to move. We're just getting some lubrication in that joint. Okay, so second side, so we're onto my left side now. Again, turning, weights on my right. You may feel one side is slightly stiff than the other. It's always a good thing to do something like this because we're just lubricating that socket. And often if you're stiff in the hips, your low back will start to compensate for that stiffness in the hips. So if you've been sat a lot, I think rotation of the hips is a really great way of restoring some movement around the hips and taking the strain off the low back. So again, if your foot starts to move out like mine does, make sure that you have more weight on that one side and that you're rotating on the spot. Okay, so 12 to 9 we're going this time, left to right. And as you do it more, you'll feel less of your hips start to move, okay? So just lift your hips, just do a check and see how they feel, if they feel good. Second version of this exercise, we can use a chair, okay? So chair, bring it out. We are gonna place our foot on the chair and we're just gonna try and turn the toe in and out. So this time we're actually coming slightly past 12 o'clock. Imagine that we're coming to about 2 o'clock. There's a little bit more resistance once we kind of cross about 45 degrees of extension. So, hip flexion and leg extension. So we're turning in and out, just trying to get this hip to move, the ball in the socket to turn. And as you get to the outside, because we have our leg raised up, press that heel into the chair, try and pull that toe out to the side. You may even feel it move into your hamstring. Okay, so back's nice and straight, looking straight ahead if you can. We'll turn that toe all the way out, maybe a little bit of strain in the hamstrings, you pull that toe towards you, and now we're just trying to turn and move that toe on the inside. So now we're pointing inside, you'll feel it move to the front of your hip, and then we move it outwards. And as you do this more, as you make sure your hips are square, as you do this more, you'll find that it should get a little bit easier, and also that hip should start to loosen up. So often when we have a really dry hip, we don't have any synovial fluid in the front here, and the ball is kind of not necessarily grindy, but it's a bit sludgy and it doesn't move so well. it's a bit fixed. It can feel a little bit uncomfortable, sometimes painful as well. So getting movement in there in a healthy way, restoring that lubrication will take away some of that proprioception of the joint that's associated with pain. So let's turn it in and out, and it will improve the quality of the movement too. So we've done about 10 wipes on that side. We'll do 10 on the other side, okay? So same thing, toe on the chair, we're turning all the way out, we get a little bit of a stretch on the outside of the hamstring here, pulling our toe towards us, and we're turning all the way in, all the way in. So in and out, in and out. So about 3 there, 4, and again we're just trying to keep these hips square if we can. And we're pushing into the chair. We're trying to move it with control. We're not like flopping around with the foot. We're just trying to get this hip to move all the way in and out. So as you turn in, make sure that you're keeping that toe towards you and that you're not turning your hip to compensate. And right, so second variation of this is kind of the next step up. So level 1 would be just a rotation on the floor. Level 2 would be on the chair, just get a little bit of hamstring involvement and a little bit of hip flexion as well. Third option is we're going to do a full rotation, and the fourth option we're going to have a little bit of bonus afterwards as well. So come back to our start position. We're going to turn our foot, so now we're pointing towards the screen, okay? So we're rotating this way, opening our hip up, we're opening outwards, we're closing inwards slightly. We want to try and keep our hips square. So turning up to the ceiling, turning down, we're squeezing, so we're adduction, squeezing downwards, we're turning out, turning in, a little bit of adduction, we're squeezing together, making sure that we're nice and straight, turning out, turning in, try and keep your hips square if you can. If you open up a little bit, not a problem, but if you can, as your hip starts to feel a little bit better, keep this hip fixed in position, just keep that toe rotating. That's kind of what we're going for here. All right, so turn in and out. Again, sometimes this rotation is all it takes to make your hips feel amazing. Now, I would always take a long brisk walk over mobility drills. If you're having any low back and hip issues, it's really, really easy to loosen your back up if you go for a nice brisk walk quickly, a couple times a day, but you can always return to this stuff too. Awesome, so that was about 10 turns. I'm going to change to the other side this time just so you can kind of see. So I'm going to turn away from the camera. And same thing, we're doing these windscreen wipers in and out, and we're trying to keep our hips forward. So put your foot on the chair, turn your foot to about 90 degrees. We're turning in, making sure that we're adducting, we're squeezing the hips together to create some tension, and then we're turning all the way out, all the way in, trying to keep our hips forward if we can, but on the first few reps you may find that it's a little bit more challenging. They'll start to ease as you do more reps, and again, as you get your toe down, as it starts to internally rotate, do a little bit of an adduction. We're just adding back into the middle, we're squeezing not the knees but the hips together, creating a little bit of kind of engagement of the musculature around that hip to try and centre that joint, try and get that ball to sit in the middle of the socket. It's really going to help you to feel a little bit better when we do some of the other rotational movements a bit later on. So we're just coming up to about 7 or 8 on this one, so we do a couple more. All the way out, all the way in, pushing down, all the way out, all the way in, and now we're coming down. So you could do that a few times, you do that for a few sets, whichever variation you prefer, just probably do that one. Now it's for a little bit of a bonus one. I'm not going to show off my terrible soccer skills, but if you have a ball, this would be a really easy way of integrating some mobility work. All you're going to do is trace the outline of the outside of the soccer ball to get your hip to open up. So as you transfer the weight to your standing leg and then you reach out, this can be a really great way of integrating that glute, that medial glute, that lateral stabilization. I'm stretching out, so my hip is on stretch, feeling my socket traction a little bit as I push into the outside of that ball, and now I'm coming around, I'm stretching out. So again, lateral stabilization, really good for that glute. And I'm also getting a little bit of traction as I trace the outline of that ball. So I'm coming around, I'm getting kind of this action as my hip starts to loosen up a little bit. I'm stretching out, traction, around we come, and we're stretching out using that ball. Now we can go the other way too. Again, really impressive skills here. Not. And we're just getting that hip to do the same circles, but with this, we're actually integrating a little bit of lateral stabilization, so this glute, and we're getting a little bit of mobilization of the full hip and low back as well. So pick your tools. This can be really great. Really simple way to add some integration of other movement, especially the glute med as well, which is going to help with that lateral stabilization. So if you have any issues with instability with your trunk, this could be a really great way of developing some stability on a single leg and some mobility of the hip at the same time. And you can go as far as you like. So once you get more stable, obviously you can stretch the movement a little bit further. Feel free to go clockwise or anti-clockwise. On this one, I'm not too worried if you bend your knee or not. But once you get a lot more advanced, obviously you can just use your heel and use that standing leg to control the movement more. Okay? So that's a third variation with a little bit of integration of movement. All right, so I'll let you play with that one. And just a little bit of fun for Euro Cup. We're coming down to the ground. We're coming into our Core 4 series with a little bit of work with our pails and rails. We're going to start off with a little bit of work with rotation in our stretch wave sequence, and we're going to do a little bit of integration with the pails and rails. So shoulder width apart, feet out in front. Those of you who know this maneuver will recognize kind of what we're going for here. Again, a little bit of rotation of the hip. You can do a little bit of a stretch around the hip. See if we can build up some more range, loosen up those hips. So just doing our kind of feedback loop just to kind of see if this one works for you. If you feel any tension on the front here or on the back, just take a mental note of that. It can be really, really useful just to kind of feedback later on that. So pick a side. I'm going to go to my right. I'm going to face you. This is slightly less than a 90-90. You don't need to come all the way into 90-90. It's not completely full stretch right now. And I want you to think that we're going to do a stretch wave. For those of you who've done this before, remember it's an undulating movement. Imagine a wave crashing on the rock. For anyone else who's not done it before, that's kind of what we're going for. We're kind of stretching our spine, elevating, and then we're lengthening and elongating. So take a nice deep breath in, stretching up, we're coming down, and as we come back, we're bringing our chest, our chin up our chest, stretching up, coming down, breathing in. As we stretch up, we're lengthening that spine. Imagine there's a piece of string pulling you up towards the ceiling. We're trying to lengthen that spine, and then we're reaching our chin out, down, across our knee, and then we're pushing back into our hip, and we're coming forward again. So it's like that wave-like motion. The more undulating you can make it, the outward breath and the downward phase, the better it will be and the more length you'll get. So let's just do that a couple more times. Deep breath in, coming down, rolling that chin up our chest, coming down, rocking back, and let's do one more. Rocking back. Should really feel that spine start to elongate. It's trying to get some length there. We're going to take a walk around, and you should feel a little bit of tension building that hip. So again, we're just trying to get that tissue to ease it off. We're trying to build into that motion. Once you get that range, then move around. If you're not quite there yet, feel a lot of stress still in that position or stretch, try and take some deeper breaths. Try not to fight the stretch, but just go as far as you can. Okay? So, nice deep breath in. Down. Stretch up. Stretching over. Rocking back. Stretch, stretch, stretch. Lengthen, lengthen, lengthen. Deep breath in. Breathe out. Excellent. Let's take a walk around. Try and divide this into 3. It doesn't have to be 3. You can go as far as you need to. You can even break it down into many steps you want. The undulation is what's important, but we're going to do a 3rd step. Should have a little bit of rotation here. Feel anything in your low back. Let's say having some contraindications of not twisting from your doctor or chiropractor or physio. May want to stop right here because this one can add a lot of torque in the low back. But same thing, onto the side now. I'm taking a deep breath in. Lengthening. Stretching. Breathing out. And I'm done with the side. So again, divide this up into different positions. For this next one, we're coming down to hip. I'm just going to move, elbow. I'm just going to move across so you can see. I am lifting my hip ever so slightly, stabilizing my elbow. If you need something underneath to pad it, feel free to. We're just going to bring our arm across just to find out how we feel through this lateral aspect. We're actually going to bring our hand underneath, rotating in, and then we're breathing out, turning our hand up to the ceiling, breathing in. Breathing in. Breathing in. Breathing in. And one last time. Breathing out. So we're just trying to get that inward breath on the way down. We're coming in and we're stretching out, we're opening up. You can do it the other way around. That can often be beneficial too if you're trying to get more into a parasympathetic kind of relaxed state. That imagine it expanding, you can open up and breathe a little bit more. But with this one, you pick which way around you want to do it. So the next way we're going to do it, the next stretch we do is we're going to reach across, we're stretching the back wall, a little bit of rotation, look at your hand, and then we're coming around like a helicopter position, around anti-clockwise, around, getting that chest stretch and opened, reaching and around, reaching to the back wall and around, reaching and around, and let's come back up. So you can also add a little bit of a bonus on this one, pushing your hand into the floor, looking across your shoulder at the opposite foot. That can also work. Again, pushing your hand into the floor, lifting your hips slightly. Let's do a check-in. Let's do a check-in, see where we're at. A little bit of rotation of the hip. And see how that feels. If this feels good, give me a comment afterwards, give me a like, let me know how that feels. We're going to switch to the other side now, okay? So we're going to do 1990 the other way, and then we're going to come back to this position, we're going to add in some other elements. So again, focus on this one, a little bit of an undulation, a little bit of a wave. This is where you really find out which side is tighter and which stretch kind of helps best on which side. So take a mental note of how you feel. We're going to do the stretch wave, so we're stretching out, pulling that piece of string, lengthening our spine nice and tall. Deep stretch, chin forward and down. Breathing out, chin to chest. Rolling up, breathing in. Stretching out. Let's turn a little bit. Again, rotation, a little bit of torque on the spine, but mainly we're looking for a stretch on the hip. So if you feel any pain in the low back, I would avoid the stretch, but if you feel a stretch in the hip, perfect. Take a nice deep breath in. Excellent. You know what to do. Let's walk around. For those of you who are just joining us, we're in a hip stretch. We're focusing on this hip on this side, trying to get some stretch through the glutes as well, working through this undulating stretch. Nice deep breath in. Come back. Nice deep breath in. Come back. And back. Do it 4 to 5 times each side. Let's drop down onto our elbow. We are reaching up and over just to find out how our lat stretch feels. Feel if there's any opportunity there, and take a mental note because you'll be checking back in a minute. We're going to rotate under, open all the way up. And as a little side note, push that foot into the floor as well, and that will also help that hip stretch as we rotate. You should feel a little bit more on the front there. Deep breath in, all the way up, and turning in. Excellent. Let's switch to our last stretch in the sequence. I'm going to bring it around. We're stretching to the back wall. If you want, you can lift your hips slightly at this point, but we're stretching all the way around. You should feel that go all the way through the lats, the shoulders, the chest, maybe even into the biceps if you've worked those out yesterday like I did. Stretching around and around, and one more time. And around. Let's come up onto our hand. We're pulling that shoulder back and down, lifting that hip ever so slightly. Let's look across, see if we can see our shoe across our shoulder. And let's come back to the center. Let's do a check-in. Feet pointing slightly out. Let's just see how that feels. So anything left in there to get out, we're going to do a little bit of retraining the brain from this position. We're going to do some isometrics, I suppose, some internal external rotation. So let's come back to where we just finished. Same position, less than a 90-90. And what we're going to do is we're going to plant our hand down, and we're actually going to work on opening this hip up. So if it gets too pinchy, just bring this leg forward. If it's not too bad, keep it open. But what we're going to do is we're going to work on lifting this leg up, opening this hip. So you might feel a little bit of pinching or tightness on the inside of this hip, but again, this is just because we're not used to doing this move. Now, if you need to get something to raise your shoulder up, foam roller will work well. Yoga brick also works. Use the ball as well. Whatever works, but the idea is we're rotating this hip so this foot is up, and then we're kind of coming back down again, turning our shoulder in. So we're opening up, opening up, opening up, feeling a stretch on the inside of our hip, and then back down again. We're rebuilding this external range, this opening of the hip, that's really going to help you to safeguard against injury, to get a little bit more mobile, take out some of those low back issues. Should already start to feel a little bit better the more you do it. So you're probably going for about 10 repetitions, something like that. Maybe I think we've got another couple, but the idea is that you can plant this foot on the floor, and I can push down now, so I can lift my hip off slightly if I need to, and now I relax it, I bring it down, and I'm like closing that clamshell type position, and then I'm opening all the way up. Now, if you want to take it a stage further, you want to try and open it up a little bit more. I don't have that on this side. I don't think I have it on the other side, but this can be really, really beneficial. So if you start to find that as you're doing this maneuver, it doesn't feel as difficult, your brain's starting to let you open that range, that's excellent. It's exactly what we want, because now you're going to remove that pain from the hip. You're going to remove that tension from the adductors. We're going to get those abductors working a little bit, and you're going to get that hip nice and healthy. Okay, so let's do the same thing the other side. We are less than 90-90, so knee wants to be nearer the front foot, and we're going to open our hip up. So find a comfortable start position. Foot is flat on the floor if you can help it. We are opening our hip up, so we're pushing the shoulder into the ground, and we're closing it. Again, just find that comfortable position for the first rep. You can always make it more difficult as you open the hip up. This side's a little bit tighter for me, so I'm just going to take my time. I'm pushing my hand into the ground. I'm just concentrating on rotating this hip and leaning it into this back corner as I bring it down. Pushing my heel into the ground. I'm guiding that knee towards the back of my front foot. I'm opening up, I'm planting that heel, a little bit of a stretch. I'm coming down, slowly though, because again, we're trying to build that pattern in the brain. So open that hip, and we close that kind of clamshell position. Heel down, bring it down to the back of the foot, bring it down, and to the back of the foot. Bring it down, a little bit of a stretch on the inside, the adductors, bring it down, and then out. Starting to get a little bit easier for me. Hopefully this is starting to work for you too. And again, the idea is that you should get those hips nice and healthy, rotation, a little bit of control. And as I get to the top, I'm just pushing down into the floor as well, just to kind of teach the brain that, you know, and the musculature around it, the nervous system, that is okay, and that position should be comfortable. Okay, so let's do another check-in. We do a little bit of hip work. Normally I find that adds a few more degrees of range of motion because now the hips are feeling a little bit more stable. It's like you've added that safety net back in with that new range. So let's just do that rotation. Bring your feet out a little bit wider, I should have said. See if that feels any better. Does that feel better than when we did our first rotations? If it does, fantastic. We're going to do a little bit of a hip reset, and we can also do some other work on rotating the hips around the clock if you know the exercise from the last couple of sessions. I'm going to quickly give you a refresher so you can do that one. That also works well as a combination with this one. If you remember, we're starting in this position. I'm going to give you the first one to work on, and then I'm going to help you with a reset at the end just to kind of show you what to go through. So if you're watching a replay, watch this, then pause it, do the other side, and then watch the reset straight afterwards. But if you remember, we are rocking around the clock, getting that hip to open up. So the idea is we're staying nice and tall with the body, and we're rocking around the clock. So we're moving from a 12 o'clock to about a 3 o'clock. If there's anywhere that gets stuck, so let's say I get stuck at about 1 o'clock, I'm just going to hang out. I'm just going to rock forward, build that end range, see if it starts to feel comfortable. Now, we obviously did a little bit of work beforehand of building out that proprioception. So this, for those of you who've done this before, may even find this even easier than you did the last time, which is great, because anything you can do to help build that confidence with the nervous system, that active range, a little bit more proprioception, control, and stability is what's going to help you be pain-free and moving really comfortably and athletically, and hopefully get you back in the gyms a little bit sooner. Okay, so once we get to this 90-degree position, again, we're just reviewing one time around. We come into this goalie stretch, this half kind of tactical frog position, and we're just rocking back. The idea that we're feeling it on the inside of our adductors, and we're rocking back. And if you can, plant that foot flat on the floor. I'll come across so you can see. I'm planting my foot flat on the floor if I can. If not, not a problem. Otherwise, I can rotate out like we did with our first exercise. That's another option too. And all the while, I'm pressing my heel into the ground, creating a little bit of traction for that hip. And if you want to add more traction, you can lean to this back corner, okay? So when I'm in this position, my goal is to, as I sit back, either get my foot flat on the floor, so I get a deeper stretch, or rotate that foot upwards, so that I get a little bit more of a lubrication of the joint in the socket, okay? So once you finish that position, obviously you can repeat that same thing on the other side. Feel free to review it in the replay so you can do both sides equally. For now though, I want to make sure that I stabilize your hips with you. So, two options here. We can use a foam roller or the ball, so if you have one or the other, that's fine. Or actually you can use your hand as well. So for those of you that remember, we're just creating some torsion across our hips. So one leg is down, one leg is up. We're pushing our hands into the front of that leg that's up, and my other leg is pushing down into the floor. Pushing, 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 pulling my shoulder blades down as well, creating some tension. This should be working, so this hip flexion is working. So my knees coming into flexion. This one's trying to create extension, so I should feel my glute fire on that side. And we're going to change sides the other way. So now I'm pushing this way, creating hip flexion and a little bit of knee extension. And this hip is trying to create a hip extension, trying to create that cross-body torque. So hip flexion, hip extension. Should feel it right here, should feel it on the back side as I try to push into the ground. And let's do that one more time. Hands on top and meeting the resistance. And by doing that, you should create a little bit of torque across the hips, which will help you reset them in a minute. And other side. Again, pushing foot into the floor, hips trying to come through, trying to lift up, but I'm meeting the resistance on the side. Excellent. Last thing we're going to do, again, you can either grab a foam roller, which I have, or you can use your hand. We're just going to bring the foam roller into the middle of our knees. If you want to use a ball, that also works well. We're going to drop our hips to the side, squeeze your knees as hard as you can, and then drop to the other side. Squeeze your knees as hard as you can, feel your clicks and pops, that's okay. Squeeze, 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 and then back to the middle, and squeeze, 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 and feel the clicks and pops. That's actually a good thing. So, that is your mobility magic session on a Monday. Hopefully you really enjoyed that one. I know a number of you were looking for some new hip exercises, new ways to get into that joint. I think that was a great session. So if you have any comments, any feedback, feel free to leave them in the session post after the session, so when we put the replay up, because unfortunately all the comments for the sessions get lost if you post them now. But if you have anything that you would like us to cover, let's say leave it as feedback on the video we post afterwards for you to watch in the Instagram live section of the Good Life page. And if you have any questions, anything that I can help you with, feel free to reach out to me directly at Fascial Stretch Simon. Would love to help you and assist you if I can. As always, have a great week, and I look forward to seeing you again 11:30 on Monday. Have a great week. Bye.